Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffe Kennedy, author of epic fantasy romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Ah, delicious. Today is Monday, November 4th, day before Election Day. Here in the US, I know everybody is just really ready for it to be done and hopefully with a good outcome. And I know I keep saying I won't talk about politics because we've all had enough. So I'm going to try not to. Today is the beginning of the week in which I will finish my draft of Never the Roses, I believe. Do we all believe? We believe. Yay, thank you. I'm filling in your voices for you. We believe, Jeffy. Yeah. So I'm at 76,000 words, not much different than we spoke on Friday, but 12,000 to go. Should be doable. I think I know how it's going to end, so that's a positive, right? Uh, yeah. I think I figured out the ending. I had to message Dorinda and told her that I had pulled a Dorinda because when did I tell her this? We always have this argument about whether or not we will remember things. And she says, I'm a fan of that. If it's in there, if you thought of it once, you're going to think of it again. And one of my proofs of this is I saw another writer posting this the other day. I do this all the time when I'm revising. And she was talking about it, like upon revision, she'll think of the most perfect sentence, and be like, oh, I should have put this in before, but here's this perfect thing to say. And she'll add it in and then go down 2, 3 lines, and there's almost the exact same thing verbatim already in there. You just forgot. And that it's a real thing. So I'm a big believer in the subconscious mind, that there are things that our subconscious remembers, keeps track of, that we may not consciously keep track of. And yeah, so Dorinda and I have this ongoing argument about it. But the other night, as I was falling asleep, I I think it was as I was falling asleep, or if I woke up, something like that anyway. And I was asleep. There was sleep involved. I was in bed, eyes closed, and I um, got kind of an inspiration, feels strong. I just got this idea. I kind of knew what was going to happen next, how it was going to end. And I very nearly got up out of bed to go write it down. I'm not one who keeps like the pad of paper next to my bed or anything like that, because I don't typically do that. And I thought, I should get up and write it down. But I was cozy, and I was really either asleep or on the verge of sleep or in and out, whatever, one of those things. Very drowsy anyway, and cozy in the covers. And so I did not. I thought, I'll remember it in the morning. And so in the morning, I remember having this mental conversation with myself, and I didn't remember. So I messaged Dorinda, and I'm like, I may have pulled a Dorinda. But you know what? Once I started writing, it came back to me. I did remember it. So I think that's a point for Team Jeffy on I just think that stuff's in there. Dorinda says no, that it's lost forever. I think she's wrong. I think she does remember it. She just doesn't realize. So I had a good weekend. I had a very busy social weekend, which is, I don't know, unusual for me. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of, oh, yeah, Friday. Okay. Um, Friday afternoon, I went and helped Melinda with her uploading to Kobo. Got that done. Actually went really fast, and was nice to see her. We had a funny conversation. She's always charming and delightful. And then that evening, I went into town because my husband's brother was here visiting, and I went and met them at Tomasita's for Mexican food. We had a table in the bar, and it was very, very loud. So it was just, I don't know. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it was very loud, and I was tired. lately I'm so tired by Friday. I think it's because I'm pushing so hard on drafting this book, and this book is taking a lot out of me. So it's like by Friday evening, I'm just like, oh my God. And then Saturday morning, I went to my favorite yoga class, which was great. And then I went directly from there. I actually wore makeup to yoga class, which I don't normally do, but I was going to have a busy day. And so I went from yoga class directly to Sweetwater Kitchen, where I had brunch with Carrie Vaughn, the amazing author. She has a new book out. It's called The Naturalist Society, and I'm holding it up. The color on my phone doesn't really show up all that well. Oops, there we go. There, that's pretty good. Uh, Really cool cover with birds on it, both stylized and one realistic. It's got a Victorian feel because that's kind of that's not the exact era, but it's 1877. You historian types can tell me what exactly I should be calling that era. But it's about people who are naturalists, and protagonist who is a bird watcher, and but also can do magic. So I've started reading it. I'm very excited to read it. We had a delicious brunch and a great conversation. I really like Carrie. We have a very similar kind of life path, so that's interesting, and a lot of commonalities. And so then I went from there to run a couple of errands, talked to my friend Susan Lee on the phone for a little while, caught up with her. And so that was like, this is more socialization, which is why I mentioned socializing. And so then I went to Beastly Books, where Carrie Vaughn was having a conversation with Daniel Abraham. And George R. R. Martin showed up, and so it ended up being a whole lot about the things George wanted to talk about, unfortunately, rather than their books. But it was really nice to be at Beastly and to hang out with folks, and it went very long with George being there. And at one point, I looked back and saw faithful podcast listener John Ajudabar. Hi, John. Who I got to see briefly at the end because I finally got assertive. They have a new events manager who doesn't know that she's got to stop George. um, George, I doubt you listen to this, but we do love you. It's just that, like the other people, kind of wanted to ask questions too. Um, and I'm sorry that they didn't get to talk to the authors. And then finally, it started at 1, and at 2:45, I finally stood up and I was telling the new events manager, I'm like, they need to move on to signing because I needed to go do things. So I was sorry I didn't get to hang out and talk to you, John. I would have liked to, but I had to quickly get my book signed and get out of there because I'd get home and do a few things and then turn around and come back into town and meet Jim Sorensen, my faithful crypt partner, and his wife Ming Lee. We had dinner, which was delicious at Del Charo, and then we went to the Lindsay and saw Ira Glass. And Ira Glass gave a talk of This American Life fame, and he gave a talk on things I've learned, 7 things I've learned. And it was, I'm hesitating, aren't I? It was good. We had an interesting conversation on the way back to the car. I've not been thinking over much about the things he said. I don't feel like I got anything revelatory out of it, which I think I would have hoped to do. I've been thinking more about things that Carrie Vaughn and I talked about, which, maybe isn't fair, but it was good. Maybe there's a few things that Jim and I will bring up and talk to each other about. I think the one thing that I found interesting that Ira Glass brought up, and I think it was like even his final segment, because he did these, the 7 things, and he did 7 segments. One was very, very short. But he was talking about a photographer who never shared, and I don't remember her name, sorry, who never shared her work during her lifetime. All of her photographs were discovered after she was gone. She was a nanny, and she took care of this little girl, and she was apparently this intensely private person. Like, she kept her room locked all the time. So like the little girl never saw inside the room. But after this woman died, they found all of these photographs, these amazing photographs of sort of New York, or is it Chicago? Anyway, city street life in the late 1960s. And, you know, we were talking about the nature of art. And this did come up with George also, where George was really talking about his friend Howard Waldrop, and the idea that, is it enough to create something beautiful? If it's not commercially successful, are you a success or is it a failure? And how do you define success and failure? Um, and so with this photographer that people were talking about, is it a pity that she never showed anyone anything? And the thing Ira Glass brought up was that in the interviews with people about who had known this woman, that she would have really hated that he was presenting her photographs and that we were talking about her. And is that a transgression? And somebody else brought up Emily Dickinson, who was a recluse all her life, and her poetry has transformed American literature, uh, but only because her sister published her work after her death. Otherwise, we would never have known about Emily Dickinson's work. And so there's this back and forth. Do we respect the wishes of the dead, or do we bring to light their stuff? And for me, one thing that I came up with was the idea of, that there's a strong survivor's bias here. And I brought that up, and Jim said that I didn't go the direction he thought. He was thinking in terms of the survivor's bias of all the people whose work is brought forth after their death, which is not transformative and not interesting, and we don't celebrate or talk about that, which I thought was fair. I was thinking in terms of all the work that's never brought to light, right? The people who did not have the sister or the family to unearth their trove of artistic creation and bring it into the light. Um, so it's like we can't imagine a world without Emily Dickinson's poems, but we live in a world without Angie Schnell's novels, right? And no, I've totally made that up, right? We don't know who Angie Schnell was. She died with her novels never seeing the light. I have strong opinions on this, and that I believe that the creation of art, it comes back to this thing, right? Is it enough to just create art? Are we doing it for ourselves? And of course, first and foremost, it does need to be for ourselves, right? Um, but I'm a believer that art is a conversation, and that if you write a book and no one reads it, then you have not completed the circuit. That it's like a battery, that it's an energy flow with the universe, and with other people. And if nobody ever connects with your art, why are you doing it? And clearly for some of these people, it was enough for them to just do it. So, it is an interesting conversation. It's a conundrum that continues. Um, of course, the whole debate about commercial viability, I know, is something that weighs on George's mind, because he has been so tremendously commercially successful. And he would like that for all of his friends too, right? I mean, we all do. And there's maybe a little bit of survivor's guilt there, right? It's like, why am I successful and this person was not? Um, his friend Howard Waldrop was apparently impoverished his whole life. And I didn't know Howard, but it's like, why are some things commercially successful and other things not? The coaches and the success gurus always want to tell you that they can teach you how to do this, but there is also serendipity and magic involved. Um, yeah. So I guess I did get some thoughts, but considering that there were like 7 things, um, and I don't know, I felt like as an artistic creation, right, that IR Glass is putting out there, and he was talking about stories and the nature of storytelling and why do we tell stories. I expected to come away with more than I did. I don't feel like he really landed the plane on that. But it was an engaged audience and people seemed to enjoy it, and it was a fun evening out. So, all of these things. And then yesterday I was home, I did laundry. It's been snowing. We got our first snow. It's very nice. And my husband's brother, my brother-in-law came over and they watched football, and it was nice. It was very nice, nice day. So, but busy with socializing. And finally, it's been on my list for like a few segments now, and I haven't gotten to it. But I do want to touch on it. Is there seems to have been a motion within the industry, especially in self-publishing, and it could be generational. It might be indie authors' expectations, but I've been seeing more and more of this idea of with ARCs, advanced review copies, and we have to remember that I'm sorry, indies, and I self publish too. So, but indies have borrowed all along from traditional publishing, right? There's no way around this. Traditional publishing existed for a very, very long time, much longer than self publishing, and so a lot of the practices and language come from traditional publishing. So in traditional publishing, you would send out an advance review copy. The publisher sends it out, affectionately called an ARC, to bookstores and reviewers and so forth as part of generating early buzz for a book. Um, Usually very much so to reviewers, right? Get those reviews, um, get the nice endorsement quotes and so forth. So indies have become very, very strongly invested in this practice where some will send out hundreds of ARCs and they will have an ARC team. And there has been a controversy, I'm going to put that in air quotes, lately about whether or not the readers are expected to give feedback from the ARCs. And there appears to be quite a few newbie indie authors under the impression that this is an opportunity for them to get critical feedback on the book. And I'm just going to say no. No, at the ARC stage is usually an uncorrected proof, which means it's like before the final proof stage. So there may be errors, but usually, if all is going well, by the time someone reads it and detects an error, you've already gone to press. You've already corrected those errors. Now, in this day and age of digital publishing, that's not necessarily true. You could still correct things. You can correct them after. And so I think that has sort of opened the door to this idea that um, if you read an ARC and uncorrected proof, then you should tell the author about errors. But now it also seems to be like some authors think, or some readers think, that this is an opportunity to give feedback on the story itself. And it's too late. If you've already sent it out to all of these people, um, I'm going to come down on the side of it. It's too late. Um, Okay, so this could be generational. I know that a lot of younger people have grown up with the idea of crowdsourcing stuff. Like you have your teamwork on Google Docs, and there's lots of opportunities to crowdsource things. Um, Now I'm, pretty far on the spectrum of like I don't even publish my deleted scenes because I deleted them for a reason. And I don't like to show my deleted work. I don't like to show unfinished work. I like barely even put up snippets. I do from time to time. But for the most part, I don't because I don't like putting out anything that isn't isn't my best. Or at least isn't past a finished point because I do acknowledge that deciding what the best is not always easy. But If you regard it as unfinished, if you regard it as still requiring feedback, then that's a different stage of the process. That's why you have critique partners. That's why you have, critique is for an earlier stage when you might still excavate the whole thing. Um, Beta readers is like when it's pretty much done and you've got it all together. Arcs are a stage past that. So I was having this conversation in my Discord because we were talking about my mentoring Discord, which you can join. I should probably pimp it more often. Um, but one gal was trying to decide. She was revising her book and going to send it to her editor. And she was trying to decide. She had things that she knew she needed to fix. Should she fix them before sending them to her editor, or wait and fix those things along with her editor's fixes? And there's no hard and fast answer to this. The way that I think about it, and the analogy that I used with her, is it's like, you don't want to be dusting the house when you're pretty sure that you're going to have to tear up the floorboards, right? Um, there's certain things like you could dust and paint at the same time. Uh, but if you're going to be doing renovations still, there's no point in dusting when you're going to be covering everything with dust again. But, like, how do you know? You don't necessarily know. The flip side of this is that when I send things to my editor that I know need fixing, I don't want them spending time working on that or thinking about that when I already know. I want them to tell me the stuff I don't know. And so my further analogy to that on like house cleaning is, like I do pay some gals to clean my house every 2 weeks, and it's a deep clean. And I do things like pick up and do the dishes, load the dishwasher before they come, because I can load the dishwasher. I don't want them spending their time loading the dishwasher. I want them to like do the stuff that I am not good at or that I don't want to do, like cleaning the cabinets and that sort of thing, the baseboards. So it's a trade-off. But regardless, all of that happens before the arc stage. You don't, your readers are, and maybe this comes back around to the idea of commercial success, completing the circuit, even for advanced review copies. That's for review, right? Review copy. You don't want to send them something that is unfinished, that needs work. All right, so that's where I come out on this. I hope you all have a great Monday. If you haven't voted, please get out and vote, and go out and vote for Kamala Harrison Waltz, because anything else is unthinkable. And think good thoughts for us, everyone. And hopefully on Friday, we will be celebrating. You all take care. Bye-bye.